Welcome PSY 364 students. This is my week 10 commentary as we are beginning now our third module in the course. And we are approaching Halloween tomorrow and the last day of October. First of all, let me say that the issues of men and violence and boys and violence are part of what we are studying today, this week, and Chapter 12 in Kilmartin and Smiler is our focus. There's no doubt that there is a strong association between violence and males. That being the case, Kilmartin makes the point that yes, that's there, but that doesn't mean that men and boys are violent. And that distinction is an important one to think through as to why it's in the book and what it means. To me, it speaks to the issue of prevention and the fact that violence is not a trait, but rather it's a class of behaviors. So what this week is really about is understanding certainly the causes and forms of violence amongst males, but also I think it's just practical and useful to think about prevention and intervention while we look at violence. I must say I am impressed by the fact that many psychologists and sociologists have made a point that we all are hardwired, that's the term, to be fascinated by and in some strange way attracted to violence. And we needn't speak about that at length, although it would be easy to do so. But the point being is that as fascinating as it is, of course, it's also terrible. And therefore, to approach this with some discipline and some sense of purpose is important. Put it shortly, I don't believe that we should study violence among males simply to be fascinated and appalled by it, but rather understanding it and doing something to improve the situation really is what it's about. So, all that being said, we're going to look at this chapter this week, but we're also going to come back in 2 weeks to the issue of males who are at the extremes. And by that I mean extremely destructive and toxic and violent, and also extremely heroic. So we'll in no way be minimizing the importance of acknowledging the risk of violence in males, but neither will we look at it disproportionately. Okay, all of that being said, this is a sort of a straight-ahead week insofar as we're entering November. I have put for you in this week's folder a supplemental article by Rolf Lober. Rolf Lober is one of the great researchers on the prediction of violence, specifically in young men. So this article is not easy to get through. I would not recommend doing it in one sitting, but it is important because it speaks to the issue of the challenges of prediction, and that simply simplifying situations to think of violence as a trait is not borne out by the science, nor does it speak to the issue of this difficulty. So please read the Lober article. It'll be the basis of one of the essays in an upcoming test. Okay, the discussion board is percolating along reasonably well, but a bit slow. So if you can remember to engage in weekly discussions there and post your plans for the oral presentation. It's a required assignment in this course. Now's the time to get organized, particularly if you want to schedule a peer group off schedule, meaning not on that weekend. All right, let's see. think that's one more thing, I think. Notice that this week we're basically opening the door on the study of violence and aggression in males. And it's really a three-week block of content, if you would, insofar as next week we'll look at relational issues. And my own take is that the motives for violence often are relational in nature, perhaps as a function of having sat on the board of directors for Augusta's Family Violence Program. Although I don't think that it does anybody any good to confine our focus to interpersonal violence. Neither do I think that the motives for violence are simply trauma from the past, although that certainly puts someone at greater risk, but also issues of temperament, as you will see, issues of circumstance, and also on the motivational thing, I would think that we need to deal with the fact that violence can be pleasurable. So we'll look at some of these hard realities in the next 3 weeks and see what the science of psychology has to offer, not only by way of analysis of causes, but also in terms of prevention and prediction. All right, that's a bit of a rambling commentary for this week, but it speaks to the difficulty of the subject matter. I think we can all agree that either as parents or as community members, this issue is a major challenge for us all. All right, I'll leave it at that. Have a good week. By all means, get started with your research project this week. And if you're interested in men or boys' aggression and violence, that's fine, but make sure that it's a useful study and not just a voyeuristic focus. So I'd be happy to help anybody with their course projects on this week's subject matter or any other subject matter in the course, as long as it's relevant to your developmental needs. And more about that as we get farther along in the semester. Have a good week.